week. Mary Margaret Kastelberg running for House of Delegates. She is in a key district, open seat, Debbie Rodman running for state senator against Siobhan Donovan. We have predicted already that Donovan is going to win that race. She's very tough to beat. But so this is an open seat. If the Republicans have any hope of maintaining control of the House of Delegates come January on the November 5th election, any hope that they have rests on Mary Margaret Kastelberg. If she loses, they're toast. So this is probably the most important race that the Republicans have. They have to flip this seat, or there's no math, in my view, that gets them to 51. With Kastelberg winning, they do have an opportunity to get there, and she has been touted as one of the stronger Republican candidates in this cycle. So she's going to be joining us here momentarily, and obviously this is the Henrico area that she is in, and we'll have a chance to chat with her. She's got a couple of different positions than some other Republicans have, so we're going to flush those out as well right here in the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America, 73rd District, part of Henrico. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, live in Richmond. I'm your Godzilla of the Truth. Joining us now is Mary Margaret Kastelberg. Mary Margaret running for House of Delegates member in Henrico. Mary Margaret, great to have you with us.
Thank you, John. Thanks for inviting me onto your show. Glad to be here this morning.
All right, let's go right to some of your most recent policies, Mary Margaret, in a district, by the way, that the Republicans have to win or they cannot control the House of Delegates, in my judgments. If you lose, you're going to get caucus of the corn will take over. And ladies and gentlemen, I've been ringing the bell and ringing it. I'm not sure who's listening, but the crazies are at the gate. I mean, these people are certifiably nuts. This is not your Democratic Party of the past where it's Dick Zaslow and Janet Howe going to chamber meetings. No, these people want to take your guns. They want infanticide. They want to do what the governor said, which is third term trimester late abortion coming out of the birth canal. Nobody will admit that. You got Mark Levine putting legislation in Northern Virginia to confiscate every assault weapon in Virginia. They want to take your guns just like Beto does. They want to get rid of right to work, and it goes on from there. So I'm encouraging our listeners, wake up here and understand what the consequences are if caucus of the corn takes over. Now, having said that, Mary Margaret, you've come out with some policy on gun legislation that is different from many of your Republican colleagues. You did a TV ad on it. I was hoping that you could elaborate on that.
Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity to do that. I did, after speaking with lots of folks and doing my own research, and really this all comes for me from wanting to keep people safe, and that is something that is a concern, and feeling like we need to do something. We need to address the issues that are out there with regard to gun violence, and I think it's difficult to do, but I think we can balance some reforms with the rights of law-abiding citizens, and that's really where it comes down to. It's a balancing act. It's where do you draw the line? Obviously, the constitutionally protected rights are sacrosanct. But where I'm coming from, again, is public safety, and there are really just a few areas where I think we can do something. One is purchases of guns at gun shows. In my view, if you go to a public gun show to purchase a gun, you should have a background check, period. It begins and ends there. I am advocating for some magazine limits. I don't know where that line is, but I know it's not 100. And I also am advocating for comprehensive background checks, which is, as you know, distinct and different than universal background checks, which my opponent is clearly advocating for that. And by that I mean the integrity of the data in the background check system needs to be solid. But also, when a juvenile offender creates or commits a violent act, that information should be fed into the background check system. The Parkland shooting is an example of a case where that would have been of benefit, in the system. And then finally, and probably the area that's gotten the most attention from my commercial is the red flag laws. And I like some of the concepts of red flag laws, but want people to understand that a red flag law by itself, it can't work in isolation. It really needs to work in conjunction with some mental health system improvements, and that it just doesn't work by itself. This is where the balancing of constitutional rights and needs to be considered. And I just think that when you consider this type of legislation, there are certain parameters or certain principles that I would need to make sure are addressed before I would vote to approve any kind of red flag law. And obviously, someone's due process rights need to be protected. That's fundamental to our system of government, and I would not want to violate that in any kind of red flag legislation. And again, it's really all about safety, and if someone is identified as a person who is of imminent risk to themselves or others, we need a system to be able to expedite that matter before a court so that it can be addressed. And we also need to make sure that it's not this type of law is not abused. So any good red flag law would need to have provisions in it that provide remedies against someone who tries to abuse the law for, personal reason or vendetta or something like that. I mean, generally, those are the principles that I'm operating with, and that's how I will approach any type of legislation in this area.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth. I'm with Mary Margaret Kastelberg, Republican candidate for the House of Delegates in Henrico. That's the 73rd district. That's the district that Debbie Rodman represents. Debbie Rodman, of course, part of the infamous Kathy Tran infanticide legislation. And Rodman now running for state senator against Siobhan Dunavut. Dunavat's going to win that race, my judgment. Without this seat, Republicans have zero chance of winning 51 seats in the House and maintaining control and stopping caucus of the corn. Let me get these straight, if I may, Mary Margaret. So on guns, you're differing from your party in some areas, and I just want to recap this so I understand it. You want to close the gun show loophole, right? So you want universal background checks. I'm in favor of that because that
not universal background checks.
Okay, go ahead.
If you go to a gun show to purchase a gun, you should have a background check.
Okay.
Universal background checks really encompasses all transfers, private transfers, transfer of a dad to his son, or neighbor to neighbor, that sort of thing. And I'm not advocating for that.
So the
Talking
only
about gun show purchases.
So I'm sorry, I just want to get this straight for the purposes of time. The only background check loophole that you want to eliminate is those that involve buying a gun at a gun show out of the back of somebody's truck. That's it.
Yes, from a private seller, yes.
Got it. Okay. Second thing is, and I'm in favor of that. And as you know, President Trump has called on senators, Republican senators, to take a look at this, what might make sense. And I agree with him that you have to take a hard look at this. And my whole thing is, if you're going to have background checks, why have a loophole? That's like saying you have to pay to get on Metro, but if you don't pay, if you just walk through the turnstile, you're not prosecuted for that. So then why would anybody pay it? Just that the whole thing makes no sense to me. So we're in agreement there. Let's get to the things that I think are easily to understand. One of the things that you want is, you said, comprehensive background checks so that more of your data goes into the system. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
And the way you define comprehensive, so that if I'm a juvenile delinquent or something of that nature, that's going to go into my file. So if I try to buy a gun when I'm an adult, that will show up and be a flag, right?
Right. Not all juvenile offenses, but violent juvenile offenses.
Okay.
So if someone shoplifts, I wouldn't say that would be fed into the background check system. But if they have committed a felony, that sort of thing should be fed into the system.
Okay, let's get to red flag laws. Jason Mieres has a bill in Virginia Beach, conservative Republican. His bill basically has due process. You have a 14-day period. The Mieres bill is actually on the table. It's actually written. Have you looked at that? And is that kind of the type of thing with red flag laws, Mary Margaret, that you're talking about?
I have looked at his bill, and I would love the chance to speak with Delegate Mieres about it directly. I think it has a lot of the elements that work in terms of some due process protections, and I have some questions on it. But I think in a lot of ways it does get to what I'm talking about. There is a temporary period. There is a threshold of evidence. For example, I'm probably not using the right legal terms. Mm-hmm. I'm not a lawyer, so
which is a good thing.
Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Okay, so conceptually, you're in favor of a kind of extending the red flag laws so that someone can say, hey, this person might be in a position to do harm to themselves or someone else, and so authorities will come in. You get 14 days, but you give the gun. I think Mieres' bill, you give it to a friend or a relative, and then you have to go before a judge, and they have to determine whether or not you can have those back. So that's kind of what you're talking about. That. So I was in favor of that up until last week, and let me just tell you my thinking on it and the concern I have, and then we'll get to magazine limits. Once I saw this fake, phony whistleblower report, which is now driving another impeachment inquiry on President Trump, who, based on the transcript, didn't say or do anything wrong at all, and it's all concocted, it gave me pause. So how do you stop the person that has a political motivation to just go and disrupt your world by filing things because you have a Trump sign in your yard? In your red flag law, how do you stop the frivolous complaints based not on what you're saying, which is you could do harm to yourself or someone else, but you're a political enemy? Your neighbor has a Trump sign in his front yard. The neighbor is a Antifa leftist liberal, and they file a complaint and now tie you up with fees and lawyers and everything else to get your guns back. How do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, that's a risk pretty much in every law that we have in a lot of ways. But I think, again, within the body of the law, you've got to have, it can't just be any complaint. It's got to go through a vetting process of, and get a threshold of, an independent party or law enforcement determining that there is an imminent or threat for someone to be causing serious physical injury or causing death, and that's somebody threatening somebody else or at risk of suicide, which is something that's often lost in this discussion.
Right.
That's actually statistically more, there are more young people that die from that than mass gun incidents. But you've got to have those thresholds like we do in our legal system of, now I'm blanking on it, but the
like a restraining order. Like a restraining order.
Yes.
Right.
So there's got to be probable cause. There's got to be some threshold that you've got to pass, so that somebody can't do that. In addition, you've got to have remedies within the body of the law. Again, I don't think a red flag law will work without these remedies. One, that if there's a abusive, frivolous, however you want to phrase it, complaint made that the respondent has civil remedies against the accuser, the person that brought the claim.
Like, for instance, you have to pay, if it's a frivolous claim and it's proven, you have to pay lawyers' fees, court costs, plus inconvenience fees. That would stop a frivolous, because I think what everybody's concerned about, especially after this nonsense that came out of Washington when I was there last week, is basically, again, I have a car, I have a Trump sticker on it, my next door neighbor hates Trump, and they know that I own guns, so let's file a complaint, tie me up, I have to spend money, get a lawyer, defend myself, give up my guns, get them back, take time off from work, and but what you want is, if it's proven by a judge to be frivolous, that person, there's a consequence there. Is that my understanding?
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
Here's the final thing, which is really a departure from even the president's position, limits on magazines. So, and what you said at the beginning, Mary Margaret, is you don't know what the limit is, right? Could be 50, could be 100. But I know
it's not 100.
Here's the issue that many people have with that. Where's that stop, right? First it's 100, then it's 50, then it's 10. Then they take your guns away, like Beto said. So in talking to your base right now, that's going to be their issue. I mean, I can't even go with you on that because of the problem is, where does it end? How do you answer that?
Well, I recognize that not everyone is going to agree with me on everything, whether it's this issue or others. I do know that 100 magazine limit is too many. Again, I don't know where the law is or where the line is. But here's what I say. What you're describing is a slippery slope argument, and you can really make that argument when passing any law, but I don't think that the slippery slope argument is a strong enough argument to not act. And again, what we're trying to do is to keep people safe, and balancing that against Second Amendment rights. And this is where I am. I don't think 100 magazine round is. I don't think that is something that we need in our society. I don't know where the line is, but I know it's not there, and that's where I am. Everybody might not agree with that, but that's where I am.
So if you've got 4 things on guns, if you do 3 of them, my point is the last one on magazine limits don't matter. If you close the loophole, right, which I'm 100% in favor of because the loophole's stupid. It's just dumb, and nobody can defend it. So just close it and knock it off. And so that's number 1. Close a loophole. I'm with you on that. Comprehensive background checks. I mean, if you're going to do a background check, make it a background check. So I don't know why anybody would be not in agreement with that. The purpose of a background check is to stop somebody from getting their hands on a firearm that could do damage to themselves or harm to someone else. So that's the purpose of the background check. So to not make it extensive doesn't make any sense to me either. So I'm with you on that. And I can go with some form of a red flag law, especially with your caveat that there has to be a consequence to the false accuser, which the Democrats and the liberals will have a whole cottage industry. Trust me, the next day they'll have a whole industry on how to take people's guns in a frivolous manner. But I think when you go down the path of limiting magazines, where's the stop? That's going to be a tough one for your base to swallow. And I appreciate you have the courage to come on and defend it, but you've also got to get out your base. I can defend 3 of them. That one is a little bit tougher to do because you have no number. I mean, you say it's less than 100, Is it 25 rounds or 50? How much is it?
Again, I don't know where the line is. I'm cognizant of standard capacity magazines. I don't want to limit below that. But again, I don't have a line. I am a first-time candidate being asked to consider all kinds of things. This is where I've landed. I can tell you where my opponent is on all of these, which are he's been endorsed by all kinds of groups that want to ban assault rifles, AR-15s. I did, as part of my research, went out to range and actually was there for 4 hours. I actually think got to shoot for 30 minutes. The rest of the time was education on best practices and safety and really the more important stuff. And did shoot some assault rifles. And really, I think what we're talking about here is just slowing down the speed of violence. And I think that's something people can relate to. But again, everybody's not going to agree with me on every point. And I'm not, the legislature it's not one person. It's 100 in the House of Delegates, and I think our founding fathers were wise to set it up that way 400 years ago. This is where I am. Other people are different in different places. I think we're going to come together and figure out the right answer. I think where people are coming from, and I've talked to a lot of people, I've knocked on thousands of doors across my district, and people just don't want us to do nothing. They want to figure out solutions, recognizing that this is an emotional issue, it's a complicated issue, it's not going to be solved by one thing. And there's some longer-term issues here in terms of the value of life and, people not having, just violence in our culture. All those things are long-term issues, and I'm not going to come in. I'm not naive enough to think that I'm going to come in and fix all that. But where I am coming from, again, is this is about keeping people safe. I think there are some things we can do now that don't infringe upon Second Amendment rights, that may have an impact and can have an impact on keeping our folks safe.
We're out of time. I want to thank Mary Margaret Kastelberg, Republican running for open seat House of Delegates, Henrico, 73rd District. You're taking some courageous positions, and I appreciate the time in explaining that and your thinking to our listeners. Mary Margaret, if people want more information on your campaign, where do they go?
They can visit our website at www.kastelberg4va.com, KASTELBERG 4va.com.
Mary Margaret, thanks for being with us.